through the official powers of those bodies, there's not a lot they can do to direct the terms of the Canada-Mexico-U.S. agreement.
He's not using our leverage. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got a report from the Canadian press highlighting that Mark Carney won't use our energy and critical minerals to negotiate with Donald Trump in getting a deal. We've got the governor of Colorado who says the midterms won't be giving Carney any more power to negotiate against Donald Trump if Trump does lose power in the American government. Even the CBC is bringing up that there's lack of transparency in these negotiations. We got a bunch of other stuff. Let's jump into this. Starting this episode off, we got this article on the Globe and Mail. U.S. to begin guiding ships through the Strait of Hormuz Monday, Trump says. This article goes on to say Trump said in a social media post on Sunday that neutral and innocent countries have been affected by the Iran war, and we have told these countries that we will guide their ships safely out of the restricted waterways so they can freely get on with their business. Hopefully this brings prices down. We've also got the Globe and Mail reporting Alberta separatists reached deadline for collecting referendum petition signatures. The group behind the petition, Stay Free Alberta, plans to formally submit signatures on Monday and said they already have gathered the nearly 178,000 signatures required under provincial law. With that, this would go to a referendum in October. We got some polling data coming here from Leger. We've got Liberals at 48% and the Conservatives at 37%. We've got CTV News with this one, PM Carney to meet with EU leaders as Canada and Europe face growing trade tension with Trump. Prime Minister Mark Carney will head to Yerevan, Armenia this weekend for a brief stop as a guest at a meeting of the European political community. The gathering will bring together European Union and non-EU countries, including the United Kingdom, Norway, and Switzerland. It marks the first time Canadian Prime Minister has been invited to the forum. That's not the only place he's going. CTV has confirmed Mark Carney is not only going to Armenia, he's going to meet with Zelensky in Ukraine. He's going to meet Pedro Sanchez in Spain, Giorgia Meloni in Italy, Donald Tusk in Poland, and meet with the European Union Parliament President Roberta Metsola. We got Conservative Raquel Dancho posting this. Minister Joly will be testifying before Industry Committee to answer Conservative questions on Liberal government's EV strategy. We can see here on the ourcommons.ca government website. So this is happening today. We can see federal government's electric vehicle EV policies. I bring that up because now we're seeing Chinese EVs in Canada. These have been spotted in Toronto. Here's some more of them, this one here, and some more Chinese EVs. We got Juno News posting this. Justice Wagner refuses to recuse himself from Emergencies Act appeal. Wagner claims he previously stated negative comments on the Freedom Convoy won't affect the appeal process. So he was critical of the Freedom Convoy, but he is not recusing himself from the Emergencies Act appeal. You would expect he should have to recuse himself, as this appears to be a direct conflict of interest, but this is technically allowed. Wagner claims he previously stated position won't affect Liberals' request to appeal a previous decision that its use of the Emergencies Act was unconstitutional. What a story. We've got this story from the Canadian press as Canada won't leverage energy and critical minerals in trade talks. Prime Minister Mark Carney speaks during a trade union event in Gatineau, Quebec on Wednesday, April 29th, saying that he's rejecting the notion that Canada will use energy and critical minerals as leverage. If he used it as leverage, he'd be able to get a deal. So what exactly is he doing? Donald Trump wants to make a deal. It's quite clear they want to get back at the table and solve this trade dispute that we have. Carney keeps putting this off. Trump just went ahead and did a pipeline deal. The pipeline's mostly built on our side. Now, while Trump is not really including Carney all that much in this, he has to get approval from the Canadian government and Tim Hodgson, Mark Carney, for this pipeline to go forward.
The pipeline that the president approved is at a very early stage. It's an approval for a pipeline to cross the border. There are a number of incremental steps that they have to achieve. We've seen in the past the U.S. approves pipelines and then cancels pipelines. Yeah. We can't develop our trade strategy on that assumption.
So you can see Tim Hodgson is downplaying this pipeline going forward. It seems that kind of language hints to me that he doesn't want that to go forward. So the beginning of this clip, he says a very early stage.
Early stage.
So I wonder if this is going to be another pain point between Mark Carney and Donald Trump.
We have some news that's just coming in. Prime Minister Mark Carney says Canada will not use energy or critical minerals as leverage in trade talks with the United States. Now, the Prime Minister made the remarks in an interview with the Canadian press. Carney said he doesn't consider those sectors as leverage since Canada is not talking about stopping any sort of existing trade. In the interview, Carney also said that he thinks the existing CUSMA agreement will largely remain intact through the upcoming negotiation process.
With that, we've got the governor of Colorado on CTV here. This is Jared Polis basically saying that the midterms don't really affect Carney's ability to negotiate. That seems to be one of the strategies that's been put out there, that Carney was delaying. So Donald Trump, if he lost power during the midterms, that Carney would be able to get a better deal. But he's basically saying that branch of the government isn't going to be affected even if Trump loses power.
Do you think that Congress will be able to increase the amount of pressure they place on the administration following the midterms? And I ask because I know there was, for example, one Republican representative from Colorado who voted when there was a vote about removing Canadian tariffs in favor of that. Not all the people representing Colorado did, but this one individual was among those who voted with Democrats. Like, if the midterms do result in a different balance of power in Congress, do you think there will be additional pressure? Like, they will use that additional power to leverage pressure on the president?
Sadly, having served in Congress 10 years, I have to tell you that's not really the way our system works. We give tremendous authority to the executive in negotiating these kinds of agreements. Pressure, yes. But I don't think this president gives into that pressure. I think it's more important to figure out what he wants in these relationships. Having Congress in the hands of the Democrats, very likely to occur in this November election. Certainly the House, the Senate is kind of up for grabs. Through the official powers of those bodies, there's not a lot they can do to direct the terms of the Canada-Mexico-U.S. agreement. Can they apply rhetorical pressure? Sure, but it's just not the same as the kind of prime minister, single body of the legislature system. It is a separate body of government. So it's not going to be the one, you're not going to be negotiating with the speaker and the Senate president. You're still stuck negotiating with the president and his appointees for the next 2 years.
So it basically doesn't affect Carney's negotiating with Trump. Carney is delaying these negotiations. He's saying critical minerals not on the table, not going to use that as leverage. Pierre Poilievre pushed back against that. I'll show you that next.
So the midterms might not make all that much difference in negotiations that go on around free trade between our two countries. Is that fair to say?
I fully expect and hope that in the appropriations bills, the Democrats will probably include some language that restricts the president's hands a bit in these trade negotiations. But remember, these bills need to pass the Senate with 60 votes. Even if the Democrats somehow take 51, 52 seats, they do need Republican support for those positions. So I think you might see some minor curtailing of the president's ability, but that wouldn't even occur for another year until the appropriations bills for 27, 28 are being considered in early to mid 27.
With that, we've got Pierre Poilievre being asked by a CBC reporter if he would leverage our critical minerals and energy to get a deal with Donald Trump.
Hi, Sheehan with CBC here in Toronto.
Hi, Sheehan.
A question for you. The Prime Minister has suggested Canada's energy will not be used as leverage in negotiations with the United States, and also questions further integrations in that sector at this time. Do you think energy development should be focused elsewhere?
So if energy and minerals are not going to be leveraged for Canada in these negotiations, what leverage does Mr. Carney claim to have? He's already made a bunch of unilateral concessions and got absolutely nothing in return except double the tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and lumber. And now he can't tell us what leverage we have, what demands he's making, what tariffs he wants to get removed, and when and if he will even get a deal at all. So it's all been an illusion with Mark Carney. Of course, our energy and minerals should be positive leverage in these negotiations. Let's be clear. We're never going to cut our American allies off of our energy or selling our resources. They buy twice as much as the rest of the world combined buys from Canada. But we can offer in the negotiations to build up our resources in a way that helps our continental security, that keeps both of us safe, strong, and rich. We have 10 of the 12 NATO minerals needed to fight a war. I was just yesterday at Port Coburn's refinery of cobalt, and where they refine cobalt and nickel. They make enough cobalt there for 75,000 F-35 fighter jets, to put it into perspective. If that's not leverage, I don't know what is. What I want to do is build up a massive strategic reserve of our energy and our minerals and use that as leverage to get tariff-free access to the United States economy, the most lucrative economy anywhere on earth. That will make us richer at home, more affordable at home, stronger at home, with unbreakable leverage abroad.
Yeah, and Mark Carney is basically using this strategy just as another way to delay and not get a deal. First it was, he can handle Donald Trump. He's going to get a deal by the end of July 21st, and then August 1st. And now it's like, well, we don't want to get a bad deal, so we're just going to keep putting this off and putting this off. It's becoming quite clear he's not going to get a deal. Here we've got Catherine Cullen, news anchor on CBC, trying to untangle this web of confusion that Mark Carney has created.
Catherine, what did you make of the Prime Minister's comments about the prospect of a deal with the U.S.?
What is so interesting here, Adrian, is how much has changed since the election. Then Mark Carney argued he would try to get a good deal and protect Canada. Now he is essentially suggesting he's protecting Canada by not signing a bad deal. Now, there's two ways you can look at this. You can say, well, Donald Trump has gone harder on tariffs, really leaned in more than anyone originally expected. So Mark Carney has adapted. Or you can take the view of the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre that Mark Carney promised during the election campaign that he would deliver on this issue, and there is still no deal. What we don't know is what is actually happening behind closed doors around these negotiations. What is the specific calculation that Mark Carney is making when he talks about possibly chasing smaller deals, maybe sectoral deals, versus big deals? How is Carney weighing the needs of specific sectors versus the bigger picture?
You know, it's pretty bad when CBC is saying we don't know what's happening behind closed doors. They don't tell us anything. And really, we found out that Mark Carney hasn't even talked to Trump in 5 months. So clearly he's not trying to get a deal. We've got this pipeline that Trump just signed an approval for, but it's got to go through the Liberals. I showed you that clip of Tim Hodgson. Doesn't seem like they're too anxious to do it. Jump over to CTV News. We have more pundits that are not happy with Mark Carney's economic update.
Dimitri, what kind of communications exercise, in your view, was this for the government?
Well, I don't think that in everyday life, people are out there talking about the economic and fiscal update. And if we are going to rely on external factors for the government's success in order to have more revenue, in order to spend more, I think it's going to be a challenge in 2029. And you know, this is exactly, liberal kryptonite has always been arrogance and entitlement. Why do I say that? Just on Thursday, Liberals tried to shut down committees by moving in camera. They then realized that, you know, this is turning into a mini crisis, and they shut it down. Here's the reality. Mark Carney got elected under the premise that he can walk on water. That was the deal that Canadians made with him. And that means by the next election in 2029, Canadians are going to ask themselves one very simple question. Am I better off today than what I was in 2025 on crime, on immigration, on the cost of living, on housing, on opportunity? That's it. That's a whole test. So Canadians chose a banker, which means they want a return on their investment. So everything that we saw in the budget and the fiscal update, it's great. It's a plan. But if that plan is not executed, then it will just have been promises. You know, look at this sovereign wealth fund.
Let's just stop it there for a second. Everything in the economic update is great. It is not great. Now, he's entitled to his opinion. Running a $65 billion deficit is not a good idea. We should be cutting a whole bunch of stuff, pharmacare, dental care, all this stuff to get the deficit down. The interest on our debt will be going up to 13 cents per dollar by 2030.
Is it going to deliver? The infrastructure projects that they have, building pipelines, unlocking resources, moving at a speed never seen before is what he has promised. We're a year into this, and it almost seems that we are exactly where we started at this point.
I do feel like there is, at the political level, though, Kathleen, some acknowledgement of that pressure. Like, you know, there are indications in this document, like there was a whole sort of, number of pages. Here's everything we have done. The graph, right? Like there was effort put into trying to, and I'm not saying the results are all there in any way, but like trying to address the fact that that will be the pressure that they face.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of attention paid to those first few pages and that visual demonstration of how much the Carney government has done already in the first year of governing, because people are realizing he's moving into that kind of execution test mode, right? That's the phase that we're in now. And this update, in many ways very different from the Trudeau updates in the past, not lots of new ideas or new policies or trinkets and baubles. He managed that top line number very well, but he did it in a way that was very similar to me, at least, the Paul Martin used to try to do, right? Delayed spending, very charmed forecasting for the future, because it's going to look better by the time we get to the fall, the numbers that Scott just outlined in terms of the prices for a barrel of oil. But there were lots of also red flags. Like, we're all talking about FIFA and soccer these days, so I'm going to use a red card analogy. And I think that the parliamentary budget officer really gave Carney a red card this week, where she said, the new parliamentary budget officer said that, hey, there was no clear numbers in this fiscal update on where the cuts and the trimming of operational spending are coming from, how many jobs are being lost, or for that matter, what the impact of that job loss is going to be, right? And if I could make one other point, it seems that Carney really is inclined to kind of spin off government, create new alternative vehicles for how government can be delivered. So whether that's, we know the Major Projects Office, whether we've seen the Defense Investment Agency, and now this new Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Which is just another example of one of these funds like the Infrastructure Bank that is just blowing money, massive waste of taxpayer dollars. This is quite something when you have NDP Kathleen Monk criticizing Mark Carney. The fact she brings up that Carney isn't accounting for how many job losses or where money's being spent. I mean, everything should be down to the penny listed in this document. We should have a document, a smaller one that people can easily go through to look what's in there, and then a bigger one that has all of the numbers. That should be provided to every Canadian. We're paying for this stuff.
It seems to me that he's almost, he's trying to say he's, maybe offloading risk, but I wonder if he's not trying to hide risk and transparency. And I think that theme of transparency is going to come up time and time again, because with this majority, he is going to, as Dimitri just said, try to shut down some of the debate so we can move some of his projects that they have chosen, politically have chosen to move more quickly. And that's problematic for the opposition.
He's trying to hide risk. Wow. That's what he's doing. I'm just shocked that Kathleen Monk here actually said that on national television. Looking at the comments from the people here, the circus is in town. Hey, Scott, your son's enjoying working for Mark Carney. I mean, people pointing this out now. Scott Reed is so biased because his son works for Mark Carney. I mean, he shouldn't be on this panel. Wrong on crypto. Bitcoin is up 3 times since he said bye. Now, to end this video on a positive note, we've got a Made in Canada account posting this. We have police escorting a mother goose and its babies. This is one of the most Canadian things I've ever seen.
Away from the road.
It just goes on and on and on. 2 kilometers an hour. I'm always amazed how they understand the lines on the road. I sat in my car along with the afternoon commute crowd on a major street in Mississauga as a mom and her babies casually crossed the 6-lane street at the crosswalk. Pretty cool.